and over the moon.
Welcome to the Landing Strip with Nick Lynham and Mikey Garcia, presented by From Financial.
Welcome back to the Landing Strip after the Winnipeg Jets. They play a hockey game. Only need 20 minutes, 20 dominant minutes at that, to beat the Blackhawks. Plus, I guess, a few seconds in overtime. This was an interesting one. The Winnipeg Jets pull up 1 point behind the Nashville Predators for the final wildcard spot. And they almost do it in a fashion that isn't ideal for team playoffs or team tank, with making this go to overtime. As we know, regulation wins is the first tiebreaker. Mark Scheifele, as Connor Habchak dubbed it, put up the Mark Scheifele hat trick today, a 3-point night, a -3 at 5-on-5, and an assist to Kyle Connor. We get the kids contributing to a goal as Danny Zhilkin sets up Isak Rosén. We see Koepke and Lambert's group put up a good night in Chicago. We see Connor Hellebuyck keep this team in it early. And we see them watch Chicago dominate them and come back from 3-1 down in the third period to force overtime before putting this one to bed. This is going to be one of those shows where I think it depends on what you're looking for is what you're going to take out of this game. As AJ Jets back says, is Nick starting to sweat? We might have to retire the tank commander stuff and just become the mushy middle commander the way things are going here. Let's get all into it. Lots to talk about. Kyle Connor goes Hollywood with a fun little video ad. We'll get into that. Elite Prospects takes a bit of a run at the Winnipeg Jets development model. Something to talk about there. And this team keeps pushing along to make us all miserable in a couple weeks' time. Let's get into it. Mikey, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, and there's only one way that we can start such a show after a huge win, an absolute, game to celebrate. So let's get the music going. Let's get the confetti. Man, I've been telling you guys, this is the juggernaut of a team. This is the one right here. This is the future. Wow, can't believe another huge overtime win against the Chicago Blackhawks. What a team to slay, absolutely some of the best hockey I think I've ever watched in my life, taking on such a juggernaut team. So shout out to the Jets for that one. It was great.
As Colin Hall puts it, he might have summed it up the best here, saying, it's the type of win that pushes you towards the playoffs, especially what's going on. Seattle drops another one tonight. The pillow fight continues as no one wants to take it. But Colin Hall says it's a win that pushes you towards the playoffs and inspires absolutely zero confidence about those playoffs. I think that sums up what I watched today as the way I would summarize this one. Chicago outplays Winnipeg in a lifeless first period. Winnipeg dominates Chicago in the second period. And then Chicago comes and gives it right back to them in the third to force overtime. They haven't quit on this season, but they also did not give us something to aspire towards here. Who's your anti-tank commander leaving the Chicago Blackhawks versus Winnipeg Jets game?
Well, it's got to be the Chicken Man, right? Like you said, he went Hollywood, and then he brought it to the ice tonight. So I'm going to give it to the fried chicken man, Kyle Connor.
For finishing off, eh?
You got it. That goal.
Him and Schaefer in the running for the Tank Commanders with a -3.
I know.
That's Chicago Blackhawks.
It was probably going to be them either way on this one. It just so happens that they got the win, so that he's getting the ante tonight.
I'm gonna go for the anti-tank commander. I'm going to go Connor Hellebuyck, despite what the save percentage looks like today. In that first period, they definitely easily could have left that period down 3-0.
Yep.
When he was called upon for big saves, you think of Nazar having that breakaway in the second period, was it?
Yep.
Connor Hellebuyck made the big saves in the big moments when the Jets had their lapses, and there was many of those lapses tonight, giving the Chicago Blackhawks quality opportunity. I'm going to go. Hasn't been getting many of them as this season's gone on. But with the quality faced and some of the open looks, for them to win this game by 1, I'm going to go Connor Hellebuyck is going to be my anti-tank commander on this night.
Yeah, even the goals that were scored, it's hard to really pin those as mistakes for Hellebuyck on most of them. So, yeah, it's a good call.
Over on Twitch, Choice of TK says 37 made just enough big saves to keep them in it. Over on YouTube, Rihanna says my anti-tank commander is all the Jets scorers tonight. My other anti-tank commander was Chicago, not stealing a regulation win. And they definitely tilted things. The 5-on-3 really killed them.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Can't believe
from the
that.
Jets penalty kill, especially Larry with the sticks. But, yeah, we'll go with the anti-tank commander as Connor Hellebuyck tonight. Leaving this one, though, Mikey, as we get into the game here, where do you want to start with this one? There was a lot of places you can go. I thought this was another step forward for Cole Perfetti's game, and I thought that Lowry, Perfetti, Velarde line was arguably their best line. We see Koepke, Taves, Lambert have a night. We see Rosane, Zilkin get on the board. And then we see some defensive lapses and a new look defensive group that you saw coming. Where should we go with this game to start it off in the Winnipeg Jets storylines? Where do you want to start here tonight, Mikey?
You know, you kind of mentioned it right at the top. You can kind of see what you want to see out of this game. The Winnipeg Jets this season have very frequently been what I felt like is the Rorschach test of the NHL, right? You can look at them and what you see is kind of reflected back a little bit because there were some good things that you can kind of point to tonight, right? Like you said, the continued play of Cole Perfetti, the fact that that is the Cole Perfetti we had wanted to see right from game 1. It's just that injury delayed that up until, a point in the season that, maybe it's too late, maybe it's not. I still think it is, but that's the Cole Perfetti that we were telling you was there, that we didn't want traded because that's the player that the Jets could be, benefiting off of here. We saw it again tonight with the offense finally starting to catch up now to the rest of his game. So love that. That was great. The kids had a really good impact getting on the score sheet. Zilkin getting his first NHL point. Rosane with I love how sneaky he is. He can kind of get in behind the defense without them really noticing and get that shot off. That's great. And then, of course, like he always happens to do, Scott Arniel comes in with the big bucket of cold water because they asked, you shortened up the bench pretty quick tonight. Fourth line only got a few minutes out there. And Scott said, yeah, that's going to be a lot of 3-line hockey going forward. Like, well, hold on. Didn't you just say they did really well and got on the scoreboard and contributing and, getting you offense from a place you don't normally get? That's something that you would want to reward. You'd think that your head coach would go to the media and say, yeah, we're going to, get these guys out there some more. We're really liking their game. It gives us an extra dimension. Nah, straight to, no, we're going to be a 3-line hockey team going forward. Cool. So, not great in that aspect. And yeah, in terms of like the overall, the standings and everything else, that's a whole other puzzle that I know we're going to get into tonight. So yeah, I think just, again, it's one of those nights where you'll see what you want to see out of this group. I don't think it's all that impressive, even though my earlier sarcasm aside, that you needed overtime again to beat the Chicago Blackhawks, right?
And blew a multi-goal lead.
Shout out, yeah, blew a multi-goal lead in that game. Shout out to Connor Hrabchuk, who put it on Twitter. They needed overtime to beat Vancouver twice, needed overtime to beat Chicago twice, lost to the Rangers at home, and needed a shootout to beat the Rangers.
And so they're like 10-4-4 in that span. Incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible, but like if you're looking at it going, this is the team that's going to make a run into the playoffs, I still just don't see it. Chicago stinks. They're not a good hockey team. That 5-on-3, you can give as much credit as you want to the Jets. You got to take some away from Chicago, who couldn't just get the puck through anywhere during that 5-on-3. So the fact that they needed overtime again to beat a really bad Chicago Blackhawks team, blew a multi-goal lead in it, isn't the most inspiring one to me personally. But hey, if you want to, look at the mirage of only 1 point out, cool.
And I want to point out before jumping off you there, Victoria mentioned Josh Morrissey had a hell of a game in the tee up. A little
Yes.
teaser, Victoria. He might be my From Financial Faceoff today, and I might be gushing about him as the show goes on because yes, Josh Morrissey grabbed this game by the balls and put the Jets on his back. We will be talking Josh Morrissey tonight for sure. And vibes up. And Sebastian will get into some of the playoff stuff as this show goes on too. Don't you worry about that. On this game, I think there was some fun to be had. That second period was a masterpiece. What was it? 15-2 in shots, something like that?
Yep.
And the Jets genuinely controlled all of it. Chicago ends up scoring on their first goal or shot of the second period on that backhand from Bertuzzi. But the Winnipeg Jets dominated that period. Rosane gets on the board after great work below the goal line from Danny Zhilkin. Those are some of the moments we're looking to see from the Winnipeg Jets, young guys, as they look to push for roster spots next year. You talked about Rosane getting lost and finding that open space in that slot. And Danny Zhilkin goes to work net behind the net and finds them low to high. Those are the kind of things we want to see, even in limited minutes there. That is going to see, or good to see. You see Lambert. I thought he took a step, and if they're going to roll three lines, that means he's likely going to be a big part of it, given how this lineup is configured right now.
Yep.
Him, Taves, and Koepke had a real yeah, that's what I would take from that Arneal comment a few minutes ago.
Yep.
Was that if they are a three-line team, that bodes well for Brad Lambert and what things are going to look like there. Cole Koepke continues to be a dog. Funny goal on Saturday night
Yeah.
to get on the board. But I think there are some good things going here. That Lowry, Perfetti, Velarde group, we were talking, and I didn't want to see Perfetti and Lowry get separated. You're seeing why. I think now that Perfetti has taken that additional step the last little bit here, you're seeing some good things in Winnipeg. But there's always a but. What'd you think of the kids? We haven't talked about him today yet. Elias Salmonson. What do you think of his lot in life in Winnipeg right now?
I hate when I'm right about things because it's never anything good. And yet somehow here we are once again. And yeah, Salo dropped down to the third pairing, playing with Jacob Bryson. Pionk saddled right back alongside Sandberg and DeMello with Morrissey. As is a, tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme. This was an inevitability that I'm not thrilled about. I don't like the extra chaos that playing with a Jacob Bryson provides to the game for Salo. They still did well in their minutes. They still won their minutes 5-on-5. It's just frustrating to see such a high amount of progression, really good on-ice results, both with the eye test and via analytics. Everything is pointing to, hey, playing this guy alongside Sandberg is giving you a shutdown pairing. And if he's starting to learn the offensive game, you're starting to add that extra element that you didn't have there. Why all of a sudden are we needing to have, again, it's because Pionk can't play anywhere besides that one spot. We're back again to a $7 million anchor who has to play alongside the one guy or it just doesn't work. He's the Mark Scheifele of the defense, I guess, except instead of demanding it, it's just his play is, his play demands it. So yeah, it's frustrating to see that progression stalled, in my opinion. It's another reason why, places like Elite Prospects were taking shots at the Jets development program, because it's things like this, and a whole list of other things that we're going to get into when we get to that part. So yeah, real frustrating, in my opinion, to see Salo playing there. One, because you want the long-term progression to continue. You want him to be a good piece for the Jets going forward. And it's harder to do that playing in these lower minutes, number one. And number two, in the short term, you had really good short-term results with him in that spot. So even if you're on team, they're making the playoffs and we need the best players playing to do so, you should be demanding Salomonsson to play with Sandberg, not with Bryson.
Yeah, I did think this was a tougher night for Bryson. You could see why Buffalo gets frustrated with, and it's a different frustration than what we had with Shannon Stan, whereas the boards are a real tough place for Jacob Bryson
Yes.
and what that's kind of meant for the D zone and some of the opportunities Chicago was able to create today. So we see that pair on there for a couple against. We see DeMello have another tough moment with Morrissey on that last Bertuzzi goal where he has him and he has him and he has him, and then he's not. Frustrating for sure. You nailed it. That Salo would eventually get bumped down. As Bart 1995 says, I am asking for JMO, Salo, and Sandberg Pionk for a top 4. Once again asking. And that is like the one avenue outside the Sandberg Salo thing that you could try. And I think there would be value in it because you have some decisions to make on the right side next year. But now that we're in this playoff push, you got to ride the vets, baby. We gotta get stuck riding the vets. So I'm expecting more of a 13 to 14 minute range for Salmonson. I'm with you. When you had something as good as him and Sandberg have provided, I think you're only hurting yourself in the big picture. But that's what the Winnipeg Jets like to do, and they'll be thrilled that those lines and those pairings help them beat Chicago. We'll see what happens with Dallas, I believe it is, on deck. I don't expect it to change. It's frustrating, but I don't expect it to change.
It won't change, right? And that's kind of the frustrating part, is that there's no learning that goes on when it comes to this specific topic. It's what got the Jets in trouble in the offseason in valuing the older players that they did to such an extent that those were the only additions. It's frustrating to the point where ice time is, cut into for the kids instantly. I like how we got like 3 or 4 games where they actually got to have some meaningful minutes before we panic and go straight to this thing of, well, no, we got to play the vets. We've got to play the vets because we're in a playoff push, even though the vets are the reason why we weren't in one for 75% of the season. Right. So it's the frustrating part of being stuck behind that mentality, having it be so clearly on display, and then them just doing the very obvious, ill-informed thing of, Salomonson's going to be playing that 12 to 14 minute range. The kids are going to play 3 to 5 minutes somewhere in there, maybe, if they're winning. And beyond that, you're going to just see the same retreads kind of going out there over and over again. And it gets frustrating at that spot,
No, definitely. Especially with the growth we were seeing, all it took was one bad game to resort to old habits for this franchise.
Yep.
In the midst of this 10-4-4 run into 1 point out of the playoffs. Let's talk about that quickly. Clearly, a big night for those ambitions. Maybe not. I think this was, ironically, a night that actually hurt both. No, it didn't hurt trying to make the playoffs, but it wasn't the ideal scenario for the playoffs or the tank, because we've talked about the regulation wins and how that's the first tiebreaker, and you're up 2. If you want to make that push and you want to take this back in your control a little bit, this was a spot you had to pile up a regulation W. But leaving today, the Winnipeg Jets are 1 point behind the Nashville Predators. Let's start with it. Are they getting in, Mikey? 8 games to go. What is your take on the playoffs leaving this game from Chicago?
Look, if you have listened to this show for more than about 4 seconds at any point in the past, you know that I rage against the NHL standings. They're a mirage, right? The NHL has an unbalanced schedule. The games don't line up. Some teams right now coming in today had played 75 games. Some teams had played 72 games. It's all over the place, right? So if you're looking at straight just points, keeping nothing else, in mind, sure, they're technically 1 point out of the playoffs. I can do the math. 77 minus 76, boom, 1 point out. I can see that, no problem. However, that's not really the case, right? They still, even if you're going by just that, they still have 2 teams that they would have to jump over to claim that spot. There are still 2 teams that if the season finished right now, they would still be behind, right? If we're going to freeze everything and not look at anything else, just at points, right? They're still out and there's still multiple teams they would have to jump. When you actually look at it in terms of points percentage, right, which is kind of the easiest way to balance out the games played thing, right, to kind of remove that and make everything kind of even, the Jets are 24th in the league. They would be 6th in the wild card standings. They would have to climb over 4 other teams to make the playoffs. That's a more realistic view of where the Winnipeg Jets are. They are not a point out once, just about to climb over. they would have 4 spots that they would need to improve in terms of points percentage out of 514. San Jose is in a better spot than the Jets technically, with a higher points percentage and a better chance at making the playoffs, even though they technically have 1 or 2 less points than the Jets right now. It's a mirage. It is an absolute mirage. They are not just a point out if you're actually looking at it with any type of discernity. They're about 4 teams out, and that's kind of where they'll probably finish. I would have liked them to finish a few spots below that to have a better shot at winning that, lotto ball and getting that high-end talent. But when the season kind of gets settled and everything is evened out and the games played are all kind of put together, the Jets are going to finish probably 24th in the league. They're probably going to finish about 4 teams out of the playoffs, and they're going to draft, 10th, 8th in that range, depending on how the lotto ball falls.
Yeah, interesting times. They're at 74 games. Nashville's at 74. They have the 1 point. LA, just above them, 73 games, 76 points. The Winnipeg has the regulation wins, and LA will not catch them in that regard. Only 19 regulation wins for LA. San Jose, 72 games, 75 points, a 521. What they do with those games at hand will matter the most here. By the looks of it, they win even one of them. They jump the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the other team tied with them in points percentage is Seattle. Same record, too, just 1 less OT loss. Yep. And they have the same amount of regulation wins. I will say I'm not betting on Seattle moving forward here. St. Louis still in it at 73 with 73 points at 500, though they took a huge loss to San Jose. Got to be honest, I'm getting a little nervous they're getting in. When you look at the schedules, if you just look at this Turtle Derby, if you just look at it, I don't trust any of these teams. All of these teams are lining up to get taken to the slaughter by Colorado. And what is so fascinating is 13 teams in the Eastern Conference would qualify ahead of any of these wildcard teams if the conferences were swapped. There's a very good chance whoever misses in this Turtle Derby are all drafting in the top 10 of the NHL. I don't remember seeing anything like that, but I got to be honest, maybe the vibe will change after Dallas and Columbus. There's a back-to-back that's a bit tough on the schedule. They're going to have to win both. You want to keep this going? They got to win both, given those games at hand and the points percentage. I'm worried, buddy. I think they're getting in.
Not a chance. You don't have to worry. I'm normally the one freaking out, and you have to make me feel better. To say not a chance
is not fair.
I'm saying it. I am telling you right now, this is not a team that is making the playoffs. It's not happening. I'm sorry. You can run this back afterwards if I'm wrong, and I will be the biggest clown in the world, and I'll eat it and say it, but I will guarantee you they are not doing it. I think the St. Louis Blues catch them and pass them technically in the standings before the season finishes.
Ooh. Wouldn't mind that. I'm getting nervous because all of these teams.
The Jets aren't beating the brakes off anybody. They're struggling to beat the bad teams.
Hey, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Nashville's
on teams in this group.
Nashville's on just as high a pace. The Blues are on just as high a pace in the last 10 games. Nashville's won 5 games. We won 6. The Blues have won 6 out of their last 10 as well.
Nashville just lost their last 3 when they could have ran away with it.
They could have.
No one wants to win this wild card spot, buddy. And
they don't want it. It's cursed. I get it, but I don't think the Jets are going to do it.
If you look at these rosters, the Winnipeg Jets clearly have the best team of those groups at this point. They're going to still need other teams to stumble, but the Winnipeg Jets clearly have the best top-end talent of these groups. It's going to be miserable.
That's so painful to think about, too, that they're fighting with all of these terrible teams, some of which who were sellers at the deadline, and they're still fighting with these teams for positioning, and the Jets are like, we can do this.
As Barnes says, I don't think they'll make it, but it's going to be really, really close. Like, it'll come down to game 81 or game 82.
I could see that. Yeah, you could sell me on that. It's going to come, right down to the last couple games. I just think that once the dust settles, and these teams are who they are. 2 things that the NHL fans love to pride themselves on, right? How tough both the NHL season is and how tough the NHL playoffs are, right? 82 games. They're playing almost every second night. The playoffs, everybody says it's the toughest in all professional sports because you got to win 7-game series. You got to win 4 of them. it's supposed to grind it out, so kind of the crop, cream rises to the crop or whatever.
Not this year.
Not this year, but I just think that once everything is kind of settled and set and done, we know who these teams are after 74 games. The Winnipeg Jets are a barely over 500 team.
Look at the teams right above
They're going to creep
Everyone's
right
barely
in.
above
They're not
500.
getting into the playoffs. They're going to, I'm saying they're going to finish kind of where they are right now via points percentage, about 4 teams back.
So we all lose.
Yes.
I'm going to say they're going to come 9th or 10th. I'm getting worried. And as Jesse Klassen points out, Game 82 is at home against San Jose, by the way. That could mean something. Vibe Up had asked earlier, would you mind if the Winnipeg Jets make the playoffs?
What do you mean? What I mind? Like,
we've been riding Team Tank, so I guess he wants to know if that's going to be changing if they make the playoffs.
Oh, well, like, I'm not cheering against them in the playoffs, like, if they, you know what I mean? Unless they play my Habs. But, like, again, so I think some people get confused or kind of misattribute why we wanted to see the Jets sell off some of their veterans this year and, hopefully finish in the bottom 5 to, the reason is so that there is long-term success for the Jets, because we would like to see that for the city, for the fans, for, you know what I mean? We would want them to do well, and we see that they're lacking in some high-end talent, especially young high-end talent, to replace the big pieces that they have. They don't have anybody right now in the pipeline to do so. There was an opportunity here this year where everything was going wrong to start the year. The wheels fell right off the bus. This is the perfect opportunity to go out and, sell off some of the pieces that aren't going to be here long term, stock some picks, do all that, and, reset a little bit for the future because we want them to do well. If they go on some crazy run and they go 8-0 and they win all 8 games and they get into that last spot, sure, good for them. I'll say that I'm a clown, I'm a moron. I will eat all the crow in the world and then cheer them on for their 4 games that they're going to get in the first round. Maybe 3 games if there's a mercy rule. I'll have to check the rule book. But no, I'm not going to cheer against them. I'm not going to be like, I'm so mad that they did this. I wanted them to tank to get a good pick, not because I hate them.
Well, that's the thing. As I think Colin sums up how I would feel about this after all of this in the season that we've watched here. Says, I wouldn't be mad about the Jets making the playoffs. I just couldn't get too amped up about it. And as Zach Bartel says, short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yeah.
The whole tank stuff, the whole draft lottery is all about the concept of delayed gratification here, folks. The only way the Winnipeg Jets can acquire top-level talent is at the top of the draft. Everyone bitches about no trade clauses. Guess what? The only way you're getting those types of players is the top of an NHL draft. As Alcamino says, they have no future. So when I look at the scenario, playoffs just won't do much for me. You want to get Nik back hyped up and excited again? You're going to have to wait for round 2. You're not going to see me get all amped up and tell you they're going on a miracle run when they're going to be the lambs at the slaughter for the Colorado Avalanche. For me, that would just be a disappointing result to a very disappointing season all season long, is then you'd be locked into drafting 16th and watching only 4 or 5 more games of hockey while amplifying the belief in this group. I think it's impressive that they didn't quit. We had wondered, especially post-Olympics, if they would. They went for a 10-4-4 run to bring themselves back into it. They haven't quit. The players will get some credit for that. But as far as the organizational standing, a first-round playoff round where you get murdered by the Colorado Avalanche doesn't change much about anything we've talked about this year for me and the bigger picture of the Winnipeg Jets. And Bart says, I don't trust this org to develop young talent. After the From Financial Faceoff, we're going to get into elite prospects discussion on the Jets.
You're not alone.
But a top pick is also why, or getting a top pick where they can't miss is also a big reason why this all matters.
Has to be
in the
Chevy
big
proof.
picture. But I'm wishing we would have locked in that top 6 the other day, the way things are rolling right now.
Oh, God, yeah, no doubt.
Let's move into the From Financial Faceoff, in which Zach Bartel, we are going to be taking calls if you want to ring in. We're about to open those phone lines. Give us a call. What was the difference between the Winnipeg Jets and Chicago Blackhawks that leads to the overtime win for the Winnipeg Jets. Let's talk from Financial Faceoff.
Let's hit it.
Thanks for calling the landing strip. You're on the air. What would you like to talk about?
Right on. Phone lines are open now. 1-204-800-0409. 1-204-800-0409. Get on the line. Give us a call. Let us know you're from Financial Faceoff and anything else you want to talk about. Nick, we've got the phone lines just lighting up already.
Let's go right to the phone lines.
Right on. Hey, caller, you're on the landing strip. What's your name and what would you like to talk about?
Hey, I'm Zach Bartel. I popped into the chat a few times, and mostly I listen to the podcast. I got to be honest, I don't really want to talk about the game today because it kind of pissed me off.
It was one of those games, man.
Yeah. Okay. All right. First off, really don't like seeing Salo playing third pair. We got the results with him on the second pair. He was looking good with Sandberg. Really don't like the sort of reductive thinking that is so prevalent in this organization. From top to bottom, really. More games of Jonathan Taves. I'm just done with him. I think. Okay, shoot. I gotta organize my thoughts now. I had it all prepared.
It's okay.
Look, if we make the playoffs, it's a 4-game sweep at best, right? I think we really need the tank. I can't tell you. You guys ever play Franchise Hockey Manager?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Every time I do, I pick the Jets, and I go in and I do my dream scenario, right? You go in, you trade off all the assets. You don't get anything because the contracts are so bad. And you just have this fantasy, right? And I just wish for one season that we just could have done this. It could have been fun, easy, whatever. But no, we're gonna get slaughtered by Colorado. I appreciate you guys taking my call, and enjoy it. Keep up the great work.
Hey, thanks for the call, Zach. You're one of us listening to you there. Trust me, I get it. We're still in it. The tightness of the schedule. All it takes for this vibe to turn is back-to-back losses against Dallas and Columbus. But if they win those 2 games, I think they're in, folks. I think these next 2 are going to tell us.
Don't worry. Grandpa Bones is going to come through for us one more time. He's going to save our season, except he's going to do it this time by putting the Jets' playoff hopes to bed.
Does the Jets core guys play against Bones like they used to when Maurice came to town, though? No. I remember those Mark Scheifele games.
Yeah, that's true.
When Maurice started coming back.
Yeah, they had a few in a row there at the beginning. I don't think he'll get that. I don't think he'll get that reception.
Nicholas at night says, "I called the Jets doing what they're doing during that 11-game stink in the dunk tank. I'm not happy about it, but I just knew these knuckleheads would trade a top pick for a bottom-tier wildcard spot." From Financial Faceoff, what's yours on this night, Mikey?
Secondary scoring. You got goals from Rosane. You got goals from Perfetti. You got goals from a guy you're going to tell us all about in Josh Morrissey, which was absolutely stunning. What a goal. On a night where you would expect the Jets' top line to go out and just absolutely eat against a really bad Chicago Blackhawks team, it was the secondary guys that came in and kind of put it over for the Jets. So, the secondary scoring, the thing that they were begging for the rest of the season, they got tonight.
Yeah, we've been wanting to see secondary scoring. They see it tonight. I like that. That's a great From Financial Faceoff, Mikey. Really well done. Really well done. I'm going to go. Let's go to the chat first. Then I'll gloat about Josh Morrissey. From Financial Faceoff from Gilbert Marion. Gretzky and Curry in overtime. After wanting to give the Chicago Blackhawks this game, Gretzky and Curry decided enough was enough, and they finished this one in overtime, as they've been prone to do in years past. Hard to argue with that one from Gilbert. Rihanna's along the same lines as you, with the From Financial being the secondary scoring. For me, that first period was absolutely lifeless. Outside that Lowry Perfetti group, who I thought were in on the forechecks early, we're seeing them work that cycle. We finally see Perfetti rewarded, though it comes on the power play for the chances he's been creating and getting lately. A great pass from Iafallo. But when this team seemed lifeless after the first and they came into that second period, that felt like a period where Josh Morrissey said, "Get on my back, boys. We have a playoff run to get into here. We can't drop this one." And I thought Josh Morrissey, you see it on his goal. Kyle Connor finds him across the blue line, and he starts skating. And Josh Morrissey, we know he could skate. Finds that lane, cuts the net, goes backhand, gets the Jets goal. Huge moment to bring this back to a tie. And it felt like every time on the ice, he was creating something. He was looking to get offense going for the Winnipeg Jets in ways only he can do. We saw him walking that blue line. We saw him, as Kyle Connor talked about. Sometimes he knows Connor's open before he even does. Josh Morrissey was anticipating plays at a level, an elite level that we know Josh Morrissey plays at. For me, he was the From Financial Faceoff because he was the one that grabbed this thing and said, "Get on my back." And for one period of dominant hockey, they did enough to get themselves to overtime and then get the extra point in overtime. Josh Morrissey is going to be my From Financial Faceoff on this night.
Man, watching Morrissey play tonight and score that goal just made me so listful for what could have been at the Olympics.
There's that side of it too.
Yeah.
A couple more From Financial Faceoffs in the chat. Colin Hall's From Financial Faceoff is Brad Lambert and the kids showing up, especially Brad, who's starting to look like what I and many others thought he could be. Brad Lambert continues to take this opportunity and work with it. I thought this was another positive step. He was in on forechecks. He was making plays with his stick. He was getting to those hard areas. I like that from Colin Hall tonight with what we saw from that Brad Lambert group. Tico Napoli's From Financial Faceoff was Zhulkin to Rosain in limited ice time to get a fourth line goal effectively out of under 8 minutes of ice at 5-on-5 from two kids trying to find their way into the NHL and a part of the Winnipeg Jets' future. Danny Zhulkin's up on emergency recall. He shows what he's able to do. Gets a little bit of penalty kill time too, especially that PK one. He was first over the boards. So he's showing what he could be at the bottom of a lineup. Great work. Finds Isak Rosain, who streaks in and buries. Rosain, on that type of play, looks like a guy, as who said it here. Gilbert Marion says, Rosain looks like a potential 20-goal scorer. When you can get open in those spaces and you have a shot like that, you get a chance. You want to get to the guts of the ice, and he does and finds himself alone. You like to see that.
Yep.
Turd Ferguson's From Financial Faceoff was Mad Max Scherzer giving us 6 strong innings in his first outing this season.
Let's go.
You want to talk about fun elite teams to get on the bandwagon for. This year's Blue Jays, folks, get on the 162-game grind. This team is a hell of a lot of fun. Likeable stars. They play a brand of baseball that I think everyone could connect to. Their starters, their pitching is shoving, throwing Ks like you wouldn't believe. Their defense, other than yesterday, fairly elite. And they work themselves and grind out at bats to gain runs. Toronto Blue Jays love on the landing strip tonight, as it's been a fun start for the Toronto Blue Jays. Starting 3-0 for the first time in my lifetime.
It's been
96.
It's been such a nice start, and there was something that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. said to start the season that I think maybe should be put up in the Jets locker room at some point. Vladdy was asked, "What kind of leader do you want to be for this Blue Jays team?" And his response was, "I don't want to be a leader. I want to be remembered as a good teammate." And I feel like that's maybe an attitude that needs to be maybe shared out into the Jets that could take them over.
Sebastian Hadiek's From Financial Faceoff with Scheifele getting his 9th point in 4 games. Unreal run offensively. That hunt for 100, still in play.
Still in play.
After what, 3 points tonight?
Yep. 3 points and a
Where is he
minus
sitting?
3.
Where's he sitting? 92? 92.
Yep.
8 games to go. To get there, he would simply need to be a point-a-game player. We've seen him play at over that level for 74. I was under, but you add a 3-pointer like that, I think he's getting there.
I think so too.
He's getting there.
Yep. Now the question is, can he break the 101? Can he get it so that he's all alone? That'll be the thing to watch. I think he'll hit the 100 for sure. I'm just curious, where it falls. 100. If it's 99, I'm gonna feel so bad for the guy. You gotta do it. Feed him the puck. Do whatever you can. Make it. How many free throws did what's his name take to break the record this year?
Bam.
Bam. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a
Bam
full
Adebayo. Right. We'll start doing that. Just feed Scheifele to get him that 100. That'd be the only. It'll be the fun thing for the season.
Zach Bartels from Financial Faceoff is watching Jays games instead of Jets games. Easy pick this time of year. Here's a question for you. Someone brought it up to me, and I started really thinking about it. If he gets 100 points and the Winnipeg Jets sneak into wild card 2, is he in the Hart race?
No.
Mark Scheifele this year?
No, not even close. Nope. Won't even get a vote. No. Not even from the local. He won't get a vote. No.
I think he'll get a down ballot vote.
Didn't make the Olympics. They've been so
NHL
bad.
award, though.
They've been out of it the whole way through. Nah, I don't think so.
I wouldn't vote for a Hart winner for a team that's going to put up like 85 or 87 points.
Yeah.
But if you value a playoff appearance in the talk,
that would be
I
just
could see the case you can
intellectually dishonest. That would be a true homer pick. And if that's the case, fine. Make that your homer pick. Totally okay if that's what you want to do, because that you're saying screw it. Everything aside, I just like that. But in terms of would he deserve one? No.
Hey, someone posed that question to me this week, and I thought we should at least bring it up here.
Yeah, absolutely. I would feel so indignant if I saw that. I'd be like, what the fuck?
Turd Ferguson says, when we get eliminated, can we take the reins off Scheif and stop demanding he play lockdown defense so he won 100 for sure? Lockdown defense. There was a lot of puck watching in his game tonight.
Yep.
On the baseball comparison, Nicholas at Night says the Avs are going to be throwing Ks to all the Ks on the Jets out of the playoffs. That is Kyle, Mark, Hellebuck, Kepke, Pionk. Zach Bartel asks, can we go over your Traveling versus Chevy thread? Let's get into that after the next conversation. As Saturday, we didn't get to talk as I was out celebrating. Sorry, folks. But Elite Prospects took not one, but 2 runs at the Winnipeg Jets system. If you're not familiar with Elite Prospects, that is the biggest independent scouting network at this point, covering the game of hockey. Very connected with agents. Cam Robinson is starting to break trades, so clearly he's in the league. And we see Elite Prospects put out 2 separate articles talking about the Winnipeg Jets development system. One was an article where they were going through and ranking each organization from 1 to 32. And then one was an article about stock falling, stock rising around the league. Mikey, should we start with the ranking of the Winnipeg Jets draft and development program from Elite Prospects around the league, or should we talk about where that stock is falling from?
Let's start with where the ranking is, and then we can talk about how it's reached that spot.
So, on the weekend, it comes out, Elite Prospects has ranked the Winnipeg Jets 28th out of 32 teams when it comes to drafting and development. For U23 NHL players, they have Elias Salmonson, Brad Lambert, Isak Rosén listed. Notable prospects, Braden Yeager, Colby Barlow, Sasha Boumedian, Alphonse Frey, Kevin He, Kieran Walton, who Kieran Walton, to his credit, keeps coming up with big goals in their playoff run in the OHL. We might have something there with the season that Kieran Walton had. And then key graduations, no longer considered a prospect, is Cole Perfetti. Why they ranked the Jets 28th overall? Let's see what the summary they had to say was. The Winnipeg Jets could feature higher on this list. Not only do they have 3 players under 23 skating for them right now with varying degrees of potential, but the Manitoba Moose are hosting a couple of other prospects who once received A grades from our team, Braden Yeager and Colby Barlow. Yikes on the Barlow A grade, but hey, we'll keep her going. The Jets also can count on Sasha Boumediene and Alfred Frey, 2 puck movers who could bolster their back end in time. But our confidence in Winnipeg's ability to develop its talents has dropped significantly over the years. Their top elements spend years in the AHL playing a style of game that lacks creativity. When they do get called up, they barely receive opportunities, playing limited minutes in limited roles. Their development stagnates, and they slowly lose value both as future Jets and tradable assets. Oh, who's been talking about that all the time?
Mm-hmm.
The Jets need to overhaul their approach to development. Prospects can only prove themselves if they receive an opportunity to do so. The best development teams around the NHL allow their talents to grow into roles, even if those don't fully fit them at first. And then, in their stock rising versus falling category, their first stock falling feature was the Manitoba Moose. The Winnipeg Jets should review the way they develop their prospects. Most of them end up hitting a wall with the Manitoba Moose, getting suboptimal roles and playing a style of hockey that isn't conducive to development. Even if the talented prospects who should be able to score on the team, like Nikita Chibrikov, Braden Yeager, Brad Lambert, and Colby Barlow, struggle to drive offense. Some of them didn't get NHL opportunities when they deserved them, and now such a future in the league seems unlikely. You're not hearing this from your loud, obnoxious, least favorite Jets Twitter personalities anymore. You're not hearing it just on the landing strip. You're hearing it from the biggest, most connected independent scouting network operating in the game of hockey. And when you hear what we just heard, what comes to mind, Mikey, to hear that from elite prospects and their lack of confidence in Winnipeg's ability to develop talent, especially offensively?
I'm kind of 2 minds of it. On the one hand, right? If you have a set of eyes and you're watching Winnipeg Jets hockey over the last 10-ish years, all those things are fairly obvious and in our face. Not only have we been able to see it, we've had players telling us that through, the media, hearing reports of there's no way to make the Jets team unless there's injuries because good play isn't rewarded. It's not what they're looking for, right? One of the things that jumps out at me so heavily is the last line, or the last couple lines of the ranking, where they said the Jets need to overhaul the approach to development. Prospects can only prove themselves if they receive an opportunity to do so. The best development teams around the NHL allow their talent to grow into roles, even if they don't always fully fit them at first. Which was, you read that and I went, hey, that reminds me of something that Scott Arniel said tonight. Scott Arniel said tonight, guys have a role to play and guys chip in different ways. But it doesn't matter if you play 5 minutes or 25, you have to play your role. Danny Zilkin won a huge faceoff on the PK, and he's good at those. And sure, he got a point, and that's great for him to, feel a part of it. But everyone has a role. Those 2 things, in terms of a mentality on how to run your hockey team, are so objectively different. Elite Prospects is telling you, hey, you can't just force guys into a quote-unquote role. You have to let them grow into it. You have to let them find their game. They can't automatically come in and be, flip a switch and now they are your third-line winger and they are going to play that perfectly. Progression isn't linear. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. And you can't be terrified that one mistake is going to mean your entire opportunity is gone. And that's the environment that the Winnipeg Jets have built. They've built an environment of fear for their young players that The one chance you're going to get is when a bunch of guys ahead of you are hurt. And if you don't do everything perfectly the way we view perfect, you're gone. You're back down to the Moose, and you can wait for another, 4 or 5 guys to get hurt. And sure, at training camp, we'll let you pretend to, fight for a spot, and it's going to be, it's really close. But at the end of the day, the 36-year-old that they signed in the offseason is going to be the one playing that spot. And, you're going to be back down to the Moose for another 2 or 3 years. It's just really frustrating that, it's not just you saying it. It's not just me saying it. Other people are saying it. Elite Prospects is saying it. They're going out and telling you, hey guys, this team that is supposed to be a draft and develop team, right? They are bringing that line out 15 years right through. We heard it again this year. We have to be a draft and develop team because we're on so many no trade lists and we can't, free agents are tough to sign here. So we have to make sure that we're, signing our guys long term. And look, Scheifele signed long term and Morrissey's been here and Hellebuck. Yeah, those are all great from, 10, 15 years ago. Awesome. What's happened since? Have you hit on anybody that's not a first rounder, that's not a bona fide guy? You even struggled with some of your first rounders, especially lately, right? We're not talking about how the first round pick that we got in the Jacob Trouba trade is gone this summer. We're not talking about how we traded up to go get Logan Stanley, which you can go back and listen to our previous shows to know our feeling on how that entire process went. The Winnipeg Jets have lied to all of you when they tell you that they are focused on draft and development and all this, because there is no development. Unless you are a bona fide star coming in, ready to go, can't miss type of player, you get buried on the Manitoba Moose behind a whole bunch of veterans and things like that and good for the room guys who never have to prove themselves. The whole, they've got to earn it never seems to apply to the guys that they like, to the people on the inner circle of the team. They never have to prove themselves, but all the young guys coming up always have to. That's where the meritocracy is, apparently, when it doesn't apply to anybody actually in the spot. That's why the Pionk contract for me is still always a problem. Yes, I know the cap is going up, and in a couple years, the number won't look so bad. It's the fact that it's a 7-year contract. It's the fact that to the Jets, that $7 million is a lot, and that he is going to play in that spot. And we're seeing it right now with Sandberg, where he has to play there because he can't play anywhere else. And Salomonson, who's having a good season on the ice, doing everything right. He's doing all the things you're asking of him to say to a young player that this is how you make the team. And your reward is that you get to play less minutes with Jacob Bryson because Pionk has to play there because that's the only place that he works. And otherwise, we see what a bad contract it is. So, yeah, Elite Prospects is right, unfortunately. This is a bad draft and development team. They're not good at the draft part right now. They're not good at the development part right now. The ironic part for me is that they actually probably are going to be great at signing free agents. Not any good ones, but if you're an aging NHL player and you saw the absolute way they bent over backwards for Luke Shen for as long as they did, for Gus Nyquist as long as they did, for Jonathan Taves up until this point, you're going to be like, fuck yeah, let me sign a 35-plus contract with the Winnipeg Jets. I don't have to prove myself. I don't actually have to be effective. As long as I can say I won a Stanley Cup 12 years ago, I'll get to play 60, 70 games next year. That's fucking awesome. So they're going to be fine signing free agents. They just won't be able to do anything with their draft picks.
I want to go a few different spots with what you just said there because there was a lot, and you nail a lot of it, a lot of different combos in there. You had mentioned the trade up for Stanley, and I thought this was interesting, brought to my attention from Rahul, who sometimes comments on the show, calls in sometimes as well. When you look back at that draft, the Jets had 2, 22, and 36 going into the draft. The year prior, the year that everyone lauds the Dallas Stars for avoiding a rebuild because they had 3 picks in a top 40 and they came out of it. Heiskanen at 23, Ottinger at 29, Robertson at 39, right?
Yep.
You go back to the Stanley draft and the Jets were set up to have a similar draft. They had number 2, number 22, and number 36. And they went Laine and they turned 22 and 36 into Stanley. Just a real big own goal for a team that needs to draft and develop. And when you look at what their central rival did with a similar spot just a year prior and what it's meant to them for their continued run at the top of this division that isn't slowing down. I thought that was an interesting one to look back on. And once you brought up Stanley, that came to mind. On some of this stuff, I see Choices says, funny how the national media finally coming around to the conclusions a lot of fans had arrived to a couple of years ago. There was another comment that I wanted to piggyback off that. Rylan Medwick says, glad to see elite prospects seize the organization the same way we all have been. Can't play prospects in the bottom 6 roles in the AHL and expect that their skill to miraculously translate to the NHL. And I think Zach Bartel gets to kind of the crux of this. Where was it? Where he had mentioned earlier in the comments that once you're drafted and in the Jet system, you're typecast to a role. The Winnipeg Jets view a lineup, as we talked about, very rigidly a couple of shows ago. So if you're a top 6 drafted player to be a skill guy, if there's room in the top 6, you might get a chance. If there's room on the third line, sorry, that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking to reinvent what a lineup looks like. Top 6 is for scorers, bottom 6 is for pluggers. That's a bit of a problem when you look at what has caused the Winnipeg Jets not to take another step. If you ask me, their top line being so good offensively but so bad defensively, and then Larry becomes your de facto second line to play defense but can't score in the playoffs. You need, in this day and age, 3 lines that can contribute offensively to give yourself a chance. And the Winnipeg Jets could do that through draft and development, but they do typecast everything. Everything. If you're not a fit for Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, guess what? Now you got to be a second-line player, and you better fit with Cole Perfetti. Because if not, there's no room for you in this lineup. You see the Moose, their top guys, the guys that this team at the NHL level needs to be successful, are consistently playing in the bottom 6 with that Moose team. I do think, though, when you do see something like this, I think there's a big difference between us talking on a podcast. The Jets don't care in the big picture. We're trying to entertain this market and this fan base. And we're passionate about this product. We like to have these combos. But guess what? The Winnipeg Jets aren't going to listen to people like us. We're not stupid on that type of stuff. Would we like to see more national guys talking about this kind of thing to try and up the pressure? Absolutely. And that's why I'm so active on social media, pointing out stuff. But I'll tell you this. That article will pop up in Kevin Sheldayoff and Mark Chipman's emails. There will have to be reflection because of how important elite prospects has become in that community. And the bedrock, the absolute foundation, regardless if you think the team is competitive right now, whether you think they need a rebuild, whether you think they need a retool, wherever you think the Winnipeg Jets are. I don't think it matters with what I'm about to say. At its foundation, at its core, the Winnipeg Jets have to be able to develop their own talent. That has to be priority 1. Every resource the Winnipeg Jets have in a small market like this has to go into development. Everyone whines about the no trade clauses. How do you work around that? You develop talent and bring them into the NHL. How do you work around the fact you're not a free agent destination? Guess what? You have to get the development right. And the fact that such a national big feature of that area now, studying the game in prospects, development, drafting, it's sounding the alarms on what Winnipeg's doing with their development will be noticed. I think people that have been following the Moose and want Mark Morrison gone, I imagine that's coming. But there's got to be some very big soul searching because some of that information is going to be coming from agents too. Like this isn't just a blog writing an opinion. This isn't just a YouTube show letting out our frustrations. This is a group that is in the sport in a very real way, sounding big alarm bells.
Yeah, the Jets are still coasting off of the early success that they had with, some of their first round picks and things like that. The Jets, when they transported the team over from Atlanta, were lucky enough to have a really good director of amateur scouting, Marcel Como back then, who did a lot of the really good work early on for the Jets, which allowed them to have this aura of like, oh, we're this draft and develop team. Like we know we've got our own list. I still remember those early days in the drafts of people being like, well, who are they going to take? Looking at the draft board, it's like, no, don't look at the board. The Jets have, all the reports always said, the Jets have their own list. They don't go by the national board. That's why we ended up with the Scheifele and the Trouba. They were, and that's gone though. That's not the case anymore. That's not who's in charge of scouting for the Jets anymore. That is not this is a different group who, is not so accomplished at it, does not have that track record, should not be able to rest on those laurels. And yet, we're still hearing it every year how they're a draft and develop team while they're letting their, the prospects that, again, aren't the surefire, ready to go guys, letting the other ones just kind of stagnate.
Yeah, this has to, regardless if there's a playoff appearance, regardless if they just miss, regardless of if they're drafting in the top 5, this has to be the priority that gets sorted out this summer. And I see John Chan wants Morrison, Roy, Keane, Zinger all needing to go. There has to be. We know a GM's not getting canned. Arneal's probably not getting canned. There's got to be some accountability at some point, at some spot in this organization. And this has to be the bedrock. This has to be. Every resource, every conversation has to come back to this.
Yep.
And those are some serious alarm bells being rung.
Yeah. If it doesn't cause at least a quick glance in the mirror, if not a long, hard look, I would seriously start to question whether or not there is, the passion left. Because I've always been a very big, defender of at least the idea that while they don't know what they're doing, they do care. Like, they do want to win. They just don't know how to do it. If we get to this point of, hey, look, like, people who actually are, like you said, connected into this world. This is not a random blog. These are the, foremost scouting group assembled at the moment who, again, are talking to agents, are talking to teams. This is not something to just sweep away and, go, they're a bunch of haters. You need to actually take a look. It has to be part of a bigger review. This whole season, if it's not triggering any type of alarm bell, because you're just going to go look at, the points in a vacuum. It's that same fucking thing, right? If you're only looking at it as 76 or 77 points, we're only the one off and not the step back of what's actually going on. If you're only going to look at it as, nobody else knows what's going on, only we know, and Winnipeg is hard because no free agents and we draft and develop and everyone else is wrong, then you're going to continue to go absolutely nowhere. We have to get away from that mentality, take that step back, and finally realize that, hey, maybe everything we're doing isn't 100% right.
A few comments in the chat that we're going to bounce around. Some of the league has taken some internal reviews, and there's been some big firings around the league. We'll get into some of that, and I know Zach Bertel wants me to get into my thoughts on one of those firings. But Colin Hall says, I'd also say the Jets need to realign their risk assessment in a way. There is no risk tolerance in this org. They're more than happy to sign long, bad contracts and bring in old vets, which carry poor risk to benefit ratios. But what they need to be doing is taking shots in college, guys lighting it up, late development AHL guys, European UFAs, undrafted FAs, as those are much better risk to benefit ratios. Even a NHL player like Igor Chinnikov, who you've been hyping up, Colin, was available as an RFA with no way to block it. And look what he's doing in Pitt.
Yep.
And instead, those assets were spent on a Luke Shen instead. Like, when you start to look at the asset side of it, the draft and development side, and what they're targeting, it all runs into each other here. Luke Shen became a bit of a block for Elias Salmonson.
And the funny part is the Jets would argue to you that their option actually was the less risky option. Well, we have all of these years of data on Luke Shen to say that he's a great NHL player. We've got look at this long career. We don't know anything about this young player. He could be terrible. That's too risky. When, again, you're paying for past performance at that point, right? It's not, what did you do then? It should be, what can you do for me going forward? The Jets, like you said, they have no real quote-unquote risk tolerance at all, because in their mind, they're making the quote-unquote safe choice when it's really just the cowardly choice.
Al Camino asks, if Zinger, Keane, Arneal, and Roy get canned, do they ever work in an NHL ever again? Probably not. But I want to use Nicholas at Knight's point to bounce in to some other organizations in hockey. As Nicholas at Knight says, it's stuff like this is why I'm so opposed to the Jets making the playoffs. That'll just be more unfounded reaffirmation to the org that they're doing it right. Any serious org would have fired people. And we saw two big firings. One that was a surprise, one not so much. Let's get into it. Let's start with the coaching one. Bruce Cassidy, 8 games left, canned by the Vegas Golden Knights. They bring in a guy we were just talking about a couple of weeks ago, John Tortorella. What'd you think when you saw Torts was coming back behind the bench with 8 games to go before the playoffs, and Bruce Cassidy, the Stanley Cup winner with Vegas, canned? What'd you think of Vegas there?
To quote Alfred Pennyworth, and in their desperation, they turned to a man they didn't fully understand. I was pretty shocked by it. I think we're all pretty surprised. But there's always one of the old sayings that I liked was, show me a Jack Adams winner, I'll show you a goalie that finished top 3 in the Vezina. Show me a coach that's fired, I'll show you Aiden Hill. So I'm not shocked that the goaltending essentially in Vegas cost him the job. Would I have done it? No. I think it's kind of crazy to relieve a coach that's gotten the results that he has. Again, I don't think this was a coaching problem in Vegas, right? They have not been getting the goaltending whatsoever. It's just been absolutely atrocious, which really falls on your GM at that point to not have shorn up that position. So it feels like, hey, I'm going to fire you before I get canned myself. But the fact that there are like consequences and standards on a team that didn't they just win a Stanley Cup not that long ago and have only existed for like a handful of fucking years? It's absolutely insane to me that the amount of playoff success that they've had, not only, winning a Stanley Cup in a very short amount of time after existing, but just the continued success of making it in every year, going on some deep runs, having an accomplished coach like that to say, hey, look, we're not where we want to be. This has not been the season that we want, even though we're in a playoff spot, even though that, there's only 8 games left. They saw an opportunity and they took it. Would it have been a change I made? No. But I respect the balls to go out and, do something like that to try to save what they still think is a season, I guess, that they could win in.
A few thoughts in the chat before I get into mine here. Zach Bartel says, would have loved Torts here. Same, buddy. Same. I would have loved to see him blow this up. Colin Hall says John Tortorella is going to make Aiden Hill an NHL goalie again in 8 games, apparently. Al Camino says Paul Marner shit himself seeing that.
Yeah.
Cole Billis says Vegas's ruthlessness and do anything you can to win is something I really admire and wish Chevy had the same balls McCrimmon does. So, and then I think this goes back to GMs actually. Pomerlein says part of it is the fact that Vegas's line deployment has not been good. They have Marner playing center. Cassidy's inflexibility changed it up, probably cost him his job. I would argue that was Cassidy being flexible to the roster that he was given. Once Bill Carlson went down, he had to use his $12 million investment to try and get a second center in there.
Yep.
I think that goes more to management than Cassidy. It's an interesting one. I was talking to some people. I think it was time, actually. It's interesting because I think Cassidy's a top 5-ish coach in the NHL. Like, he's truly in that category.
Yep.
The process from an underlying a numbers perspective looked really good still. Top 5 in the league as far as what they were creating versus giving up at 5-on-5. Didn't love their defensive game against Winnipeg. But they haven't been getting goaltending. Cassidy was done in by like 86% save percentage of late. That being said, I do believe the team quit on him as far as like tuning him out. And that's where Vegas takes this shot to try and get a spark back. It's clear Eichel and Hannafin loved Torts at the Olympics, so you're seeing that play in here. I think this was a last-ditch play for a team that's looking like frauds, and they knew it, and you can't make trades. They have no assets to call up because they've traded them all.
Yep.
This was their only shot to do anything. And at some point, this bill is going to come due in Vegas. I just don't buy you can continuously be a competitive team like this. Age happens. Aging curves happen. Situations like this happen where they look, on paper, pretty damn good, but they're aging. I do think Vegas is in trouble. I admire the ruthlessness. I think it's quite interesting. Vegas comes in the league in 17-18. Leslie. And since then, they have more playoff wins rounds won the Winnipeg Jets, who have all 4 of theirs from their 15 years in that span. They've gone through, fired 3 coaches in that span. The Winnipeg Jets, who are chasing a cup themselves apparently, have not fired a coach. They've had to have 2 coaches resign on them, one of which had a heart-to-heart with the owner that summer and was like, no, we can't do it, the owner said. I think there's a stark contrast there. I don't think you can compare Vegas to Winnipeg market-wise, but when it comes to how their organizations look at the pursuit of winning, it is clear one organization is willing to do what it takes, and the other just hopes they stumble into it with the guys they believe into. I think there's that stark contrast. I don't think you'd see Bill Foley ever utter the words, "This person will outlive me in this org," as he tries to chase another cup. I think there's some stark differences there in how decisive the 2 teams are in their stakes to win. But the better comparable comes from the second firing. This one was obvious. We've been making the comparisons. Toronto Maple Leafs fire Brad Treliving right before their game yesterday. Don't think it should be a surprise after their big drop-off. What'd you think when Brad Treliving got canned?
Yeah, I was like you said, that's not a surprise looking at where the Leafs have gone for this season, where they finished. Potentially maybe even going to not even get that first round pick if it falls into the spot where it's unprotected and then ends up going to Boston. So, yeah, I'm surprised Treliving lasted as long as he did, to be honest. That was a hiring right from the get-go where I was like, I don't know if that's the one I would have gone with at the time, but not surprised when you look at where they are. But, again, if we're going to be comparing it to how things are treated in other markets, then very surprising. I did not know you could do that. I didn't know that, poor performance by a general manager could mean that they don't have a job afterwards. And I do have one question, though, when we were talking about Vegas, real quick. You said the markets are different. I was told Vegas has no hockey market. I was told they have no fans. I was told all those seats are bought and paid for by hotels and casinos, and all those people that are in there are snowbirds, and they don't actually care. So why would there be any pressure from that market? I thought there were no fans there, and Winnipeg has the best fans, the smartest hockey fans, the most passionate. Shouldn't we be demanding that?
No, instead, I'm seeing people actually make fun of Brad Treliving as if Kevin Cheveldayoff hasn't been their GM for the last 18 months. And that's what I find funny about all of this.
Yeah.
In no world is Brad Treliving a better GM than Kevin Cheveldayoff.
No.
Big Bad Brad's been bad for most of his tenure in the NHL. That being said, if we're looking at this honestly, the last 18 months, Kevin Cheveldayoff and his roster movement is closer to Brad Treliving tier than anyone should feel comfortable with. Let's go through it, because here's what bothers me. We sit here. Anyone that's enjoying these conversations likely looks at the league this way. We always sit back and we want to make fun of other orgs and tell them, hey, they got to go blow this up. Hey, they got to trade this guy. Marner's got to go. The Leafs got to do this. And then when their GM gets canned, everyone's gloating and like, yeah, the Leafs are in trouble. Look at the Leafs go. Brad's an idiot. And then many of these same individuals are like, hey, Kevin Cheveldayoff, hey, don't you dare talk down on Kevin Cheveldayoff. Let's make a little bit of a comparison here, folks. Last 18 months, we're talking about 2 of the bottom 5 GMs in the NHL. Here's Brad Treliving's list of trades. He made 12 of them. That might be more trades than Kevin Cheveldayoff's whole career. Holy smokes, we might have to do some math. 5th round pick for Sam Lafferty. Ilya Lyubushkin for picks in the 3rd and 6th round. Joel Edmondson, a 50% retained for picks in the 3rd and 5th round. Connor Dewar for a 4th round pick. Matt Benning in a 3rd and a 6th for Timothy Liljegren. Scott Lawton, a 4th and a 6th for a 1st round pick. And Nikita Grabankin, horrible. 5th round pick for Dewar and Timmins. Brandon Carlo for Fraser Minton and picks in the 1st and 4th rounds. Matthias Maselli for a 3rd round pick. Type of deal Cheveldayoff should be a part of. Nicholas Roy via the Mitch Marner sign and trade. Henry Thrun for Ryan Reeves, Dakota Joshua for fourth round pick. Nothing very exciting there.
Yep.
Right? Third for Michelli, probably their best pick, best trade. A couple real disasters at the last deadline we've talked about all year. Here's Kevin Cheveldayoff's trades and moves since that same span. He acquired Dylan Coughlin for your future considerations. He was forced to trade Rucker McGrody for Braden Yeager. He traded a 2026 second-round pick and 2027 fourth for Luke Shen. He traded a 27 second for Brandon Tanev. And then he traded Logan Stanley and Luke Shen for Isak Rosén, Jacob Bryson, a 27 second, at 26 fourth. He traded Tanner Pearson for a 26 seventh. Those kind of lists seem kind of comparable outside the first round picks involved, right?
Yep.
I mean, they did trade 2 high seconds to make themselves worse too. They just happen to hold their first. And we've said all year, the one difference between Winnipeg and Toronto right now is Winnipeg owns their first.
Yep.
So check mark Kevin Cheveldayoff. But again, the margin, what we're talking about here, not much. Kevin Cheveldayoff's signings in that same period. Vlad Meskov, 2 times $3 million. Alex Iafallo, 3 times 3.66. Neil Pionk, 6 times $7 million. Hayden Fleury, 2 times $950K because he played one good game one time. Signed Jonathan Taves to the biggest 35-plus UFA structure league-wide. 1 times $2 million with show-up-to-work bonuses, making him roughly a $5 million player this year when all's said and done. Maybe even more if they make the playoffs. Signed Tanner Pearson, 1 times $1 million. Did not get a Nick Roy type in return for Nick Ehlers leaving for free in free agency, like they got Nick Roy, who they turned into a first-round pick at this past deadline. They signed Cole Koepke, 1 times $1 million. Signed Gustav Nyquist, 1 times $3.25 million. Gave Gabe Belardi 6 times $7.5 million. Bridge to second best D-man in a rising cap environment, Dylan Sandberg, 2 times $5.75 million. Locked in Kyle Connor with a full no-move clause at 8 times $12 million. The lowest rated $12 million player in the NHL. And he signed Adam Lowry, 5 times $5 million, while recovering from hip surgery. The irony in all this is, over that span, they both saw massive declines year over year. One got punished for it. One's going to probably sign an extension this summer for his work this year. What is the big difference in the last 2 years between Brad Treliving and Kevin Cheveldayoff, if we're being honest here? If you ask me, Brad Treliving is not a better GM than Kevin Cheveldayoff. But the uncomfortable truth is he's closer to that tier the last 2 years than Knott's. The Leafs recognized what he did to sink that franchise and made a change. I applaud them. Good for you guys. You're in trouble, but at least there was some accountability in the organization. Meanwhile, TNSE Ivory Tower over downtown there, we're bracing for a commitment to the mushy middle with 0 repercussions. And ironically in all this, the Winnipeg Jets had a much bigger fall off, points-wise, than the Toronto Maple Leafs. It is so stark to me. I can't take people serious that are dancing on Toronto's grave because Treliving got canned, that defend Kevin Cheveldayoff. I don't want to hear it's hard anymore, folks. 15 years, 4 playoff rounds won. That is a record that's not likely changing this year. He tied himself to all of this last year ahead of schedule when you look at how many contracts were signed in the middle of the year. And at the end of the day, if you put the Winnipeg Jets' current situation in any other market and you put any GM not named Kevin Cheveldayoff and you attached those last 18 months to them, we'd all be yelling and making fun of that team for how shitty that other market has it under current leadership. And if we looked at their future outlook of this mystery team outside of Winnipeg, not GM'd by Kevin Cheveldayoff, in any other team, we'd be telling them their window is absolutely cooked. At some point, It's time for this market to hold Kevin Cheveldayoff to the standards every other NHL GM is held to. I don't want to hear, but it's hard. It's Winnipeg anymore. Grow up. You want to be in a big league market? It's time to quit acting small. Big league markets have big league expectations of their teams and their general managers. And he has, quite frankly, failed for 18 straight months here. What can they do? No trade clauses. If only pro sports organizations have multiple avenues to approach cycles, and you might be telling on yourself on this cycle being over if the only pathway is being closed by no trade clauses. And lastly, on the Toronto comparison, all we heard was, or all I'm hearing right now, there's a lot of pieces to a cup contender in Winnipeg. And all I'm hearing is they have 4 really good hockey players: Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Josh Morrissey, and Connor Hellebuyck. How do you possibly not win with those 4 guys? All I remember hearing about those same Toronto Maple Leafs was they only had a core 4. How could they possibly win with a core 4? If they have 4 elite guys, how could they possibly win? And now the Winnipeg Jets have a core 4, and it's no. Hey, we're close, folks. We're close. We cannot have this both ways. It is very hypocritical. And the blunt reality of the 2 core 4s, Toronto's had more talent.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, we have to have a come to Jesus in this market. Kevin Cheveldayoff did a podcast with John Shannon and Darren Millard, and he was very grumpy on it. It was funny to watch. But he made sure to let us know, Winnipeg, his favorite thing is you, the people, and being in a market that cares. At some point, this market's got to care about what this management group is doing and where it's taken this franchise. It's been 18 straight months, and with where we project this summer to go, that's going to turn into 2.5 years real quickly here. It's a problem.
Yep. Chevy GM's like it's a Friday afternoon before a long weekend. Yeah, he's getting his stuff done. He's got his eye on the clock, though. He does just enough to get by. He's not getting fired. It's not like he's just like letting a contract sit there and whatever, so he does enough to get by. He's going to, punch the clock. He's going to do those things. But when it comes down to it, when we actually need somebody with a vision, with the nerve to actually make some hard choices, to take a risk, to actually put a team over, he doesn't know how to do it. He just doesn't. He's never been able to do it. The few times that he's tried to actively be proactive, it's blown up in their face. The best things that he's done, he's come out and told us weren't his idea. So it's not even like we're taking credit away from him. He's taking it from himself because he tells us that that wasn't my idea, actually. That trade that you all like, that was brought to me. And the funny thing is, I don't even really need quote unquote repercussions. I don't need to punish somebody. I would actually be okay with a GM who attempts something, it doesn't work, they learn from that, and they try something else. I would be fine with a guy attempting to do things that are, again, a little bit different, creative, trying to stay current and active with the way that trends are changing with the league. And not everything is going to work out. Not everything's going to be a home run. Some stuff may, but at least you've done your best to try to improve the team. I would much rather have that and have a guy who's willing to try and learn, as opposed to a Chevy who's going to try to I got to get everything right. Again, it's the same thing with the prospects, right? There's no wiggle room. He's got to, in his mind, he's got to get this right, and I've got to sign these veterans because that's going to get them over. And when in fact, hey man, that's not working. That doesn't work anymore. It's time to change. It's time to learn. And he just seems either incapable or not wanting to do it. I don't know which one it is. But either way, the result is the same, that we're stuck in the past, in the mushy middle, and it's not going to take the Winnipeg Jets anywhere except a quote-unquote rebuild that's going to start 4 years, 5 years too late and stretch it out. And then you're going to complain about, oh, well, look, now we're just like Buffalo spending 10 years on a rebuild. And it's like, yeah, that's not what happened. We just decided that we weren't actually going to do anything for the 5 years that the roster was declining, and we were going to chalk it up to, well, I don't know, maybe next year.
Well, yeah. As Harjivan Parwana says, Moose coach buries and can't develop prospects. Chevy can't do anything because his job is hard. Deployment can't separate $20.5 million salary. Pro scouting stinks. Leadership of the ship has a job for life. at some point. And here's what's frustrating, because we talked about elite prospects having the type of sway and national attention that it'll up the pressure in the Winnipeg Jets. They'll light a fire in that development conversation. I fully believe that. There's going to be changes coming this summer when you see something like that start to hit the airwaves. I think what's frustrating, if you remember 2 years ago, the year they got spanked by Colorado, I gave Cheveldayoff all the credit in the world. His retool got them to a level I didn't think they could get to over a 3-year span. What's frustrating about the national conversation, because they win the President's Trophy last year, despite an inactive year, like Chevy did not do anything in the off season to change that direction, and then at the deadline, he actively traded to get worse. But because they get the President's Trophy, they're rewarded with that adoration and praise, and they double down on it. And so it's like we're 2 years behind where this is all trending.
Yep.
Because it's little Winnipeg and no one's paying attention as much. This would have been signaled long ago anywhere else, and now we're playing catch up. And I think that's where it's frustrating, is because we see all this coming, and here we are. And now, because of that adoration outside the market, they doubled down and they made big mistakes.
And I want to say too, when we say things like we saw this coming, we can see this coming. It's not because we're clairvoyant or we're geniuses and we're some,
speak for yourself.
Fucking fair enough. But like, it's obvious. This is very clear what's going on. Professional sports works this way. Like, it's not some crazy, you're not reinventing the wheel. I'm sorry to Mark Chipman and Kevin Cheveldayoff. You don't have the secret sauce that the rest of the league doesn't. If you did, you might have won something at some fucking point. Maybe even an American Hockey League title. You didn't even do that, for fuck's sakes. We're supposed to be this, great thing. We're going to put this over. They couldn't do it at the fucking minor league. And it's ridiculous that we've turned this into, can't break up this core, can't fire this GM, can't fire this coach. The owner knows what he's doing, when, again, they've never won a fucking thing. Anytime they've tried to be proactive, they fucked it up. It's gotten to the point now where, unless there is a brand new vision coming in, I don't know how the Jets change their fortunes. I really don't. There's not a quick fix to this. This is not a one player away problem. And if you can't see that it takes overtime twice to beat the fucking Chicago Blackhawks of 2026, if you don't see that as a red flag, not as we're getting into the playoffs, then I don't know how to help you.
Yeah. Another good read at The Athletic this week. Sean McIndoe was sounding the alarms about the Winnipeg Jets likely trending in the direction of spending assets to finish 15th, 16th, 17th type in the NHL and just miss. And that was concerning, but you're seeing more and more attention on it, so hopefully that adds some spark. We're talking about, when this is all said and done, a 30-plus point drop and potentially making the playoffs in a year where the West was pathetic. That's going to be the accomplishment. You can't sell me on that being an accomplishment. As Nicholas at Night says, to quote the late Claude from the infamous Arsenal Fan TV, it's time to go!
Yes.
And it's time for us to go into the 3 stars and a tank sim and get out of here on this night. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's hit it.
3 stars, who you got?
Right on.
Real DFE, just touching on the last conversation, Chipman needs to hire a legit president of hockey ops and get out of the way. And Nicholas at Night says, if the Jets org had the spotlight on them the way that Maple Leafs do, they'd be getting ripped from eyebrows to arsehole this season. Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely. Let's get into the 3 stars.
Sorry. I still can't believe the fact that Vegas, who I was told has no fans, no hockey culture, nobody likes hockey there, has more standards to winning than Winnipeg, who was supposed to. I'm still baffled by this.
That's all on the owner, not the fans, though, buddy.
I know. That's what I'm saying. All right, 3 stars. 3rd star, Cole Perfetti. Gonna give it to him. I like goals. I like Cole. I'm giving him a 3rd star. 2nd star, Kyle Connor, but only for the KFC commercial. And 1st star, Josh Morrissey, because he's fucking awesome. And they would have won a gold medal if he had played at the Olympics.
Yeah, that KFC commercial. Really well done. Does he have an acting career? That was
Yeah.
cool.
Actually, you know what? He should have an acting career. The KFC commercial's great. You mentioned a $12 million winger playing center to solve a problem earlier. Do you think we could do that here?
We're not even allowed to take him off his wing. Here's a stat for you. I'd love to know how often this happens. How often does the top two forwards on a team play more minutes together than the top center and the goalie?
In Winnipeg, I'd say probably 70 out of 72 games.
Over the course of the year, Mark Scheifele's been on the ice more with Kyle Connor than Connor Hellebuck.
Absolutely insane.
That's fucked.
Absolutely insane.
That commercial was really cool, though. Good to see that come out. Obviously, that's a big thing from a marketing and recognition standpoint. Huge from Kyle Connor. Great to see KFC do that with him. Over on YouTube, Rihanna's 3 stars are Helly, the Kid Lion, and JMO. Zach Bartels, JMO, Rosane, and Claude. Tico Napoli's are JMO, Bertuzzi, and Fetz. Cole Billis' number 1 star is Ross Atkins for creating a team that is fun to watch at least. I'm so excited for baseball this year, man. You guys got to get into it if you're not.
Yep.
Going from there, 3 stars. I will go 3rd star. I'll do the Cole Perfetti thing. Been happy with where his game's going. He should be giving you confidence that he is a better player than he showed in the first half, and he is a piece of this moving forward as things have gone down the stretch here. I'll go 2nd star. Bertuzzi, 2 goals for one of the worst skaters that's ever entered an NHL ice surface. Finds his way to 31. Add some grit. Let's go Bertuzzi. And number 1, talked about him for the From Financial Faceoff, Josh Morrissey. But as the odds get worse, let's go see our fate on the old tank simulator.
Right on. Let's see how we do. All right, in 3, 2, 1. Ooh, oh no. All right, well, the Jets dropped down a spot to 9th.
Yeah.
Nashville is your big winner, getting the number 1 overall pick. The Nashville Predators. Gavin McKenna, enjoy really shitty country bars and bachelorette parties, I guess.
I guess it's important to remember that at the end of the day, sports aren't about fun and enjoying life together. Sports are about finding your community to be miserable about. And with that type of result to the end of this year, I'd certainly be one to welcome some misery along with us. Because good God, man. You put me through this for 82 games, and then we're drafting 9 or lower. Oh, my God.
9 or lower with Nashville at number 1 would be just the absolute shit icing on this crap cake. The chat wants to know, Nick, if you could lock in number 8 right now, would you do it?
I wanted to shout out Derek YWG because he was the original one to ask the question. He reached out to me after listening to the show. Oh, fuck. I would lock in 6. I would not lock in 8.
Ooh, still not locking in 8. Bold. We're gonna have to revisit this one to see. That's gonna be a tough one. I'm locking it at 8. I was cocky last time. I've stopped being cocky. They're not making the playoffs. I stand by that. I will eat my hat. But I don't want to end up drafting at 11, which is where my fear is right now. So if I can lock in 8, I'm locking in 8.
Oh, man. This is so tough. I'm trying to put on a brave face here, but this is just... Whew. This is not what someone like me is enjoying here. We're going to get hurt at both ends of the spectrum. God damn it. But Jesse Klassen points out on the way out here, no question about it, I am ready to get hurt by the Toronto Blue Jays again. I will say, I've been watching the Jays for probably, 23-ish years now. There's only 2 times in my life I believe they had a real shot at a World Series, and neither of them were last year until the semifinals. I can confidently say this is the first time I've ever entered a Blue Jays season this headstrong that this team may do the thing this year. And they are just such a fun team to pull for and ride on. They're starting at noon tomorrow. As Real DFV reminds us, Jays playing at noon tomorrow.
Let's go.
Their last game with the Rockies series here. You want to have a fun ride this summer that may lead to some pain that's worthwhile? Get on the Jays wagon, because the Jets aren't going to give us the type of memories this Jays team might. And with that being said, let's get out of here tonight. Long time show. It's 12:37 a.m. Got the Stars on deck here.
Thursday, 7 o'clock.
Thursday at 7 o'clock. We'll be back post game after the Dallas Stars versus Winnipeg Jets. We'll see where we're at on all these conversations tomorrow. We're officially on the roller coaster. I fear we're on the roller coaster now, folks.
Don't worry, baby. I got you. Don't worry.
All right, we'll see y'all then.
Right on. Good night, everybody.